All right. Hi guys, a very good evening, and yes, welcome to the next session in the series. So, if you are able to see me, hear me properly, see the screen, send a hi, good evening, something in the chat, and let's get started. Okay, perfect. So, I'm hoping that somebody else must have taken the previous session. There was some emergency because of which I was not able to take it. But yes, hopefully the session went well and you were able to discuss some additional Python concepts like file handling and all of those things. So I'm assuming that that part has been covered and we are then moving to the next part, right? So in the session today, we are primarily focused on understanding Django in a very basic sense. So we'll just take a look at what the framework is about, go through the documentation, and also try to create a basic Django project, right? So I just want to check, discuss that much. I don't want to get into Django full on today, but just the fundamentals so that we understand what the framework is, what it is used for, and we'll create a simple Django project and take a look at all the files and folders that come with it, etc., etc. So that's going to be our focus for today, right? So yes, let's get started with this. And first, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the documentation that is available for Django, right? So we'll take a quick look at that, like what kind of documentation do we have, and then we will move to uh, you know, we will move to Django installation and I'll show you how to create a new project in Django and all of that. Okay, so today's topic is Django. That's DGANGO, DJANGO. I'm just typing it in the chat. So for people who are asking what today's topic is, the topic is the Django framework. So yes, let's jump to the documentation and we'll start from there. So let me just share my screen again and I'll quickly open up Django's documentation. So it's basically, it's supposed to help us create web apps more quickly. And one of the documentation highlights is it says that, Django is ridiculously fast. So that's what they say in their official documentation. And we have been using Django for a couple of years now. So you can see the latest release is 5.0.6. Okay. So it means that, it has been around for a couple of years for it to reach 5.0. But more importantly, if you just click on the documentation, if you just explore the documentation, you will see that, you will get a lot of first steps, you will get the concepts that Django uses, etc., etc. So we will talk about all of this. There is something called the MVC architecture that Django uses. We'll talk more about that as well. But yes, so this is what the documentation looks like. It's called djangoproject.com. This is the official documentation for Django. That's djangoproject.com. Now for installation, it's actually pretty simple and we are going to follow this direct terminal installation so that we don't have to install it from the documentation. We can directly install it from Django, from the terminal itself when we want to create a new Python project. Okay, but I just want to quickly highlight a few things about Django. So technically speaking, Django is able to make everything, like you can build an entire web app with Django, right? So if you check out the documentation, you will see that it can be used for both front end, back end, and all of those things. But typically, in a real world scenario, you will find that Django is mostly used for creation of APIs, right? So even though technically speaking, Django does support views, and we will talk more about them, but it is primarily used in a lot of real world situations. It is used to create the backend. Okay, but again, it is a full-fledged framework in itself, which means that we can create front-end apps or front-end in Django as well. It's not client rendered like other front-end frameworks, but it works. It's a server rendered front end, but we can create, a front end and then connect it to a backend all within Django. So that is possible. That is something that we can do, right? So that's the idea. Now, how this works is that we have to do this in 3 steps. Okay, so this is a slightly complicated. Okay, this is slightly complicated, so pay very close attention. It's very simple once you get to know it, but it's actually um, you know, slightly complicated. Yeah. Now, I can hear the audio properly. I have my YouTube live running on the side on my iPad. I can hear the audio properly. So the audio issue is probably from your end. Please check. I can hear it loud and clear. But yes, so like I said, it's slightly complicated. So pay very close attention. It's just a one-time setup. Once we do this setup, then basically you just have to do it once per project. So what we do is, in the case of Django, we end up creating something known as a virtual environment in Python. Okay, now this is not a Django concept, this is a Python concept. But what we can do is we can create something called a virtual environment. And what this virtual environment allows us to do is, think of it like creating a subfolder or a mini server within our system. Okay, so this virtual environment allows us to create like a mini server within our system, so that we can then install whatever we want on that on that part of our system. So think of it like splitting your hard disk into smaller pieces, where each piece is its own, acts as a server. So we take our bigger hard disk, we choose a folder that you want, and we make a mini environment over there. So we call it a virtual environment, right? It still is on the same hard disk. Obviously, it still is on the same system, but the computer, our laptop or Python, in this case, will treat it like its own system. So we can install whatever we want, we can run whatever we want over there without affecting anything else on our system. Okay, so we have to just create this mini or virtual environment first. That's the first step. Okay, so I'll quickly show you how to set this up. And after that, we will go ahead and create a Django project within that virtual environment. Okay, so there is a terminal command which we have to write. It's very simple. And we'll just create it quickly. We don't have to give it any name as such. There's a single command that we have to write. Okay, so for this, what we have to do is we have to open the terminal. So I am opening VS Code. I already have the folder open over here. You can see there's a session 10 folder that I have made. And within this folder, I want to create a virtual environment. Okay, so I have opened the folder here, and then I will open the terminal. So terminal and new terminal. Now we have to be very careful that we are in the correct folder before we run this command, because wherever you run this command, the virtual environment will get created over there. So that's why I always suggest to open VS Code first, open a folder in VS Code, and then write whatever command you want to write. Now, naturally, for this, Python must be installed on your system. So again, you can just go to python.org and have it installed. I am pretty sure all of you already have Python installed on your system, right? You can also find Django virtual environments, right? So if you just go to the internet and you can just look for Django virtual environment and all of that, so you will be able to find this, just like I showed you for React. You can also find running Django projects on the internet. That is also there. Okay. But yes, so this is our command. I'm just going to copy that in. So it's a different command for Windows and a different command for Mac. So I'm using a Mac OS machine. So I'm going to use this command. On Windows, you just have to say venv. And on Mac, you have to, again, just the difference is this Python bit. But again, the command is typically the same. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly create it, and then I'll show you how to activate that environment and all of that. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, so again, if you're using Linux, please follow exactly what I'm doing. On Windows, you just have to write py instead of Python. Okay, so I'm going to call it my env. Okay, this is my name. and you can see it says command not found Python. So I will also have to follow the py convention. Now you have to make sure that you have Python installed on your system for this. So unless you have Python installed, this is not going to work. Okay. So in some cases, you might want to run Python 3. If you have Python 3 installed, then it will only run that way. Okay. So you can see this works on my system because I have Python 3 installed and not the earlier version of Python or the older version of Python. So if your Python commands are not working, then Python 3 will work. So you can see my my folder has been created, and this is called a virtual environment. So basically what we are doing is whenever we activate this environment, which is what we will do next, you can think of it like we are creating a mini mini system within our system. So it's going to be excluded from everything else. It will not have access to the other parts of the system. It will not have access to any other files and folders. Whatever setting changes we do will not affect the rest of the system. So we're just creating like a mini world in itself. Okay. The reason why we do this, the reason why we create this environment is because Django creates a lot of files and folders, and we don't want any configuration to affect the rest of the machine. Right? We don't want any configuration to affect the rest of the machine. So that's why we are going to go ahead and create this virtual environment. Again, on Windows, you might want to try this command. Okay. But again, depending on Python 2 or Python 3, on Mac or Linux, you can try this command. Again, Python or Python 3. So if Python doesn't work, just type in Python 3 and it will work. Okay. Now, if you see the folder that gets created here, it has a couple of different folders. So there's a bin folder, which is what we will run next. So we will run this activate script next. That's the command we will write. This will actually activate the environment. For now, we have just created it. It's not working as of now. Okay. And then the rest of it is all configuration. We don't have to worry about it. Okay. So we are not going to go through all of these files and folders. They are not really relevant. The next command that we have to write is this. Again, this is different on Windows and Mac. So for Windows, you have this command, my world scripts activate.bat. So again, when you create this environment, we have this activate. On Windows, it will have a folder called scripts. On Mac, it has a folder called bin. So Mac and Linux will follow the same structure. And on Mac or Linux, we have to follow this one. Okay. So I am writing this, and now source my world bin activate. As soon as I do this, you will see that a new, if I just zoom in here, you will see in my terminal that this new thing shows up before our command. Okay. So in these brackets, you can see, right, my world. This is the name of our virtual environment. So right now, what we have done is we have activated our virtual environment, which is that we have now switched on that mini system. Okay, we have now switched on that mini system. I will give you link to this documentation in the chat. You can find the commands over there. Again, you can just Google for Python virtual environment. You will find hundreds of links to the same command. Okay, I have given you the link in the chat as well in case you're wondering. But it's very simple. On Windows, you will run this command. Okay, this is the name that you can give. So in my case, I ended up giving it my world. Okay, and then this is the activation script. So on Windows, the script will differ slightly. It is this script for activation. On Mac or Linux, you have this source script for activation. Now, as soon as we do this, okay, you can see that my world shows up before our command. This means that we are currently inside that virtual environment, and whatever we do, it is not going to affect the rest of our system. So basically, at this point, all the changes that we will make will happen within this environment or within this folder. Nothing can go outside and nothing can come from outside. You cannot access any files or folders outside the system or outside this environment. Okay. And you cannot, do it either way. Okay. Now, creating a virtual environment is not mandatory for Django. You can still create a Django project directly using the commands that I will show you next. But it is recommended because, like I said, the folder structure of Django is really complex. Okay, there are a lot of folders and files that get created. So it is very easy to mess it up. It's very common that people end up mixing things out. So that's why I would suggest that you do this. You do create a virtual environment, but again, it is not mandatory. You can still create a Django project without having a virtual environment as well. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we have to install Django. So if we go to the Django documentation again, um, right? So if I just, where is that? Yes. So if we just go back to our Django documentation, the home screen, and you can just click on download. Over here, you will see the command, right? So Python pip install Django. So this is the command that we want, pip install. Now this needs to be sudo because it has to be installing something to your operating system. So we have to say sudo, and this will then ask us for the system password. Once we enter that password, you can see that now it is downloading and installing Django for us. So you have to do this as the root user. Okay, because you are downloading something from the internet, it needs admin privileges. So you have to say sudo, that is root access, and then install it. Okay, if you are struggling with this installation, then you can find alternate methods available on the documentation. Okay, so you can see the documentation and you can find option 1, option 2, option 3. We have just followed option 1. That's the simplest one. You can also run the Windows, get the Windows command from here. So I will also paste this link in the chat for Django installation if you are looking for that one. Okay, very simple. We just have to say pip install Django. So pip again is Python installation pipeline. So we're installing Django, and we are specifying a version. If you don't specify, it will install the latest version automatically. So here we have specified pip install Django equal to 5.0.6. This will not change anything in our folder structure, like you can see, but it has installed Django only within this environment. Okay, Django will not be installed on the entire system. You can't access this project from anywhere else, but only when you activate this environment. So if I close off VS Code, then the environment will also close. Right? As soon as I close off this terminal, the environment will also close. So I will have to then run the source command again. Remember, we ran the source command to activate the environment. So activate it, and then you will be able to access this project. Okay, so that's the second step. Again, two steps have been done so far. Number one, we have created a virtual environment using the Python venv command. So that's Python -m venv environment name. In my case, it was Python 3. So that will be Python 3 -m venv, and then the name of the environment that you want to create. Step 2, we have activated that environment. So again, that is source, and then going to the directory. So my world bin activate. For Windows, it's a different command. You have to go to the corresponding folder and just run that activate file. That will activate an environment like this. Then step 3, we have installed Django. So for installing Django, we have run the pip install Django command, and we have installed Django. Now, once we have access to Django, then we can create a Django project. Okay. So again, if you just look at the documentation and you go to documentation and you can go to start, getting started. Okay. So again, I'm just showing you how this works because in a lot of real world scenarios, you will not have somebody who is walking you through all of this. Most of the times you will have to figure things out on your own. So that's why I'm just showing you the documentation, how to access it and all of that. Okay. So first step, we have already, taken care of the installation. Now we want to create a project. So for this, we can, go to how to guides. Okay. And then we have several different options here. So how to create fields, etc., etc. And we just want to see how to create Django project. Let us say we don't find it. So we can just Google create Django. I know the command. The command is Django admin start project, but I just want to, show you the documentation. So now if you just see here, this is the command Django. This is again on the same documentation, right? You can see the command is Django admin start project and project name. Okay, Django admin start project name. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, again, if your py commands are not working, please type Python 3. Okay, because you might not have, like you might have the latest Python installed. So if py is not working, type the full Python 3, and then the rest of it will remain the same. Okay, so that is the solution. Otherwise, it would mean that you don't have Python installed. So for that, you will then have to go to python.org and get that installed. So if you just go to python .org and here downloads, and then download it for your machine. So in my case, it is Mac. In your case, it will be Windows. Okay. So that's the idea. So again, this is Sai Manikanta Vamsi. That would then mean that you don't have Python. Again, you can check if you have Python or not by running Python-v. So this should show you, this should take you to the Python prompt. But yes, so if you don't have Python installed, then that will be, you can check it with, I think, Python version, something like this. So you can see in my case, it is 3.12.2, which means I have it installed. Okay. So please check this. And if you're not able to see anything here, then that would mean that Python is not installed on your system. If you're looking at alternate options, then again, if you go to the documentation, you will see 2, 3 ways. You can then choose one of them. So again, if this is not working, then go for option 2 or go for option 3. There are 3 options over here. So you can choose any one of them. Okay. Yes, Jupyter, in Jupyter, it will work. In Anaconda, I am not sure because it does not let us write code. It lets us write those, I mean, individual scripts. I am not sure if you can create a Django environment in Anaconda or a Django project in Anaconda. But either way, you can experiment with it. Okay. I will repeat it later, you guys. It's not possible to repeat the same thing so many times because it will be difficult. So you can just go to the recording and install it by the way I've done. Okay. Yes, it should work with PyCharm. I think so. It should work with PyCharm. But again, best case, use VS Code. It's the simplest possible option for you. PyCharm is a very big tool. It takes a lot of memory space and it makes the system slow as well. VS Code is the best for these kind of things. Right? So basically I prefer VS Code because everything can be done in one place. So why do you have to install so many different editors for this? Right? So everything can be done in one place. Let's do that. Okay, perfect. Now that this is done, the next command that we have is looks like this. So now we are creating a new Django project. This is the next step. Okay. Yes, you can use the terminal directly. Akmal, Amir, you can use the terminal directly, but again, you have to then cd to a folder where you want to install this. So that would then mean you have to write extra commands to first cd into the folder and then install it. Again, better option, directly open terminal here so that many cd steps are saved, right? Great. Now the command that we have is Django admin and the command is start project. Okay, so Django admin start project, and then let's call it notes app for now. I'm going to call it notes app or notes API. Okay, so again, this is your name. You can choose whatever you want to give. Please make sure that if you have spaces, please use underscores or hyphens. I think underscores are preferred in Django. But again, I usually go with no spaces by using the camel casing. So camel casing is where we capitalize the second word, the first character from second word onwards. So as you can see here, I have capitalized A for API. If you have 3 words, you can capitalize the first letter of the second and the third word. So we call that camel casing. Okay, we call it camel casing. That means that you are giving a name without spaces. That's the setup. Okay, so now once we run this Django admin start project command, then this creates a folder. Okay, this is our Django project. Now, finally, after so many steps, we have created a Django project, okay, which is Notes API. Now, within this project, you can see there are 2 things. So first, we have a manage.python file. And again, we don't have to change it at all. This is automatically taken care of by the system. But this is our starting point. So whenever we run the project, it will start from here. You can see it is getting everything from the settings module, and then it is trying to run the main function. So we don't have to change it. It is automatically done by the system. The second thing that we get is a folder which contains a couple of other files as well. So let me walk you through these first, then I will tell you how to structure a Django project. Okay, so now let's start with the init file. It's empty. If we want to create any variables that we want to use, if there is some data that needs to be used across our entire project, we can do those initializations over here. So typically we will only use it when we want to create some data or variables throughout the project to be used throughout the project, right? And typically we don't have many of them, but if we need some constructors or something like that, then we will do that over here. I am hoping that you already know what a constructor is based on the previous session, session 9 that happened on OOP. So I hope you already know what a constructor is, but again, I will recap those concepts once we start writing the code. Okay, once we start creating our own classes, I will recap the code, explain it once again, so that in case you missed it, you will be able to understand. So don't worry. But yes, the previous session that was taken by another faculty would have been on classes and objects, right? Great. Now the next file that we have is ASGI. So this again is some module level stuff which we don't have to worry about. It will automatically be taken care of. Okay, so we don't have to worry about it. It basically it's trying to just start the application. You can see get application, and it's just trying to run that. Then we have the settings file. This is something that we will change very frequently. So whenever we want to connect to an external database, whenever we add some middleware functionality like authentication or API endpoints, anything like that, we will come here and we will change certain things, right? So by default, you can see it uses a SQL database. But if we want to add our own database, we can add that over here. Okay, then again, we have some passwords, etc. So we will change this very frequently. Whenever we add something new to our project, we have to go ahead and modify the file accordingly. We typically won't delete anything in it, but we will add more to it, right? So that's the settings file. Then we have a file called URLs. This is a very important file. So this is where we specify our endpoints, right? So remember, every website has a URL, right? For example, www.something.com/products /reviews. So that's what we specify over here. You can see by default, we only have /admin. For example, so whatever project.com/admin, that's the only path available by default. So when we create our own path, we will delete this and we will add our own thing to it. Right now, it's just there. So again, don't worry, I will walk you through everything when we start writing the code. For now, I'm just giving you an overview of what all is already there. So basically, by default, this application supports one endpoint, one URL. That's whatever www.localhost whatever.com/admin. Okay, again, we already know that this is a list. Okay, syntax wise, it's very simple. We know that square brackets are a list, the exact same thing here. And then this is a function which is taking two arguments. How do we know? We know that function is round brackets and it takes arguments, right? You can hover over it. It will show you the function definition. We have already seen these things. So you know that this is a list. You know that this is a function. So there is no worry about syntax. We already know what these components are. We have already had a session, 2, 3 sessions on Python already. Okay. Then again, this WSGI is another application, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay. And yes, Ram, I'll start from a basic program only. This is everything we already get. As soon as we create a Django project, this is everything we get. So I'm just telling you what all is already there. And then of course, I will show you how to create our own components and add it. Okay, so we are starting from scratch only. Okay, so yes, this is everything that we get. So again, initialization, don't need to worry, don't need to worry, don't need to worry. Settings and URLs are two files that we will change very frequently, right? So settings is one file that we will change quite frequently, and URLs is another file that we will change quite frequently. Now, this is the main application. Okay, this is the main application. The way a Django project is structured. Okay, now I will sketch it out for you. The way a Django project is structured is that if this is your Django application, let us take an example. Let us say that we are creating an e-commerce project. Okay, so if this is our entire Django e-commerce project, Then what we do is within this e-commerce project, within this bigger Django project, we create mini apps. Okay. So for example, we might create one mini app for product. Okay. So this could be, for example, products. Okay. So what that means is all our product related APIs. Okay. Product related APIs that will be within this products app. Then we will create another app. Okay. So let us say that, 1 second. Okay, let us say that we now have reviews. Okay, so we have review related data. There'll be a lot of data which is related to reviews that will go in its own small app. Okay, then let us say that we have another component which is orders. Okay, let us say that we have a third component called orders. So we will create another mini project within our Django app called orders. So this is how a Django project is structured. Okay. Depending on whatever components you have, whatever endpoints, whatever URLs we have, we create mini apps in Django. Okay. So if you take a typical e-commerce website, for example, let us call it www.myshop.com. Just for reference, we call it myshop.com. Okay. Now, in myshop.com, let us say that we have slash products. Okay. So slash products will be everything, or let me call it slash orders. Now, this slash orders will be everything related to orders. Okay. So this will go in its own separate app. Similarly, at the same time, let us say that we have another, domain, another URL, which is myshop.com/products. So that will go, everything in this URL will go in its own separate app. Okay, so this will go here, this will go here. And similarly, let us say that we have another thing called my shop reviews. So that will be myshop.com/reviews. So typically, all these endpoints will get their own mini apps within a bigger Django project. Okay, so our entire e-commerce is a Django project. Within that, we are creating mini apps for every endpoint. Why do we do this? Well, again, we do this for separation of concerns. I've already talked to you about this. In a real world scenario, it is very important that we are able to split our code into smaller files, or split our code so that multiple people can contribute to it simultaneously. And typically, we have teams of 10, 12 developers in one team. If it's a 20-member team or a 10-member team, then there'll be 5 to 6 developers, 2 to 3 testers, maybe one team lead, something like that, right? So again, we'll create one team for products. So 5 to 7 people might be working on products app. Then we'll create one team for reviews. So again, 5 to 7 developers might work on reviews app. We'll create one team for orders. So 5 to 7 developers might work for orders app, right? So that's how a real world project is structured. Okay. We don't write everything in one place. We split it into further steps. Okay. So Manikanda, you have to run a sudo command. If you're getting permission denied, then it means you did not write sudo. You need root access in order to access, like create or install anything. So you have to run sudo, run it like sudo root user, and that will ask you to enter your password for your machine, right? Yes. So coming back to my point. Okay. So just add this, Manikanta, just add sudo before your command. So sudo pip install whatever, and that should work. Okay. It will ask you for the system password. Yes. So now this is how a Django project is structured. Okay. Does this make sense? Have you guys understood what I am trying to tell you here? Just put a yes, clear, understood, something in the chat if this makes sense. If not, then let me know that it is not clear. So I'll try to give you another example probably, but hopefully this makes sense to you. I am also looking at YouTube live on the side. So in case if anybody has questions over there also, please put it in the chat and I will answer them, of course. So I'm just waiting for a minute to just see, YouTube live questions if there are any, and otherwise we will continue. Okay. I don't see any questions as such. So yes, we can go ahead and continue. Okay. Now, again, so whoever this Ishwar is, please don't put your contact number and email in the chat. It's a public platform. There are 1,000 people here. Okay, it will go to spam. You will start receiving random calls. So for everybody, please don't put your personal details in the chat. Okay, this is not a private session. As you know, it is on YouTube Live. So anybody from the world can watch it and they will get your details, right? So please make sure you are not doing that kind of things. Can you repeat installation? I will repeat it after I show you the app creation. Let me do that first so that we complete it once and then I'll delete it and I will recreate the whole thing. Okay. Uh, Let me just clear the screen. 1 second. Okay. Now the next thing is yes, I will repeat the process. But basically what I was telling you is that for a Django project, what we do is we split the bigger project into mini apps. And typically every endpoint or every component gets its own app. So for that, we run a command Django admin start app. Okay, just like start project, we have another command called start app. But for this, we need to be within our project. So I will cd into notes API. Okay, so first I will cd into the correct folder, cd notes API. Then over here, we can run Django admin start app. And then let us call it, let's say in my case, we have an app called notes. Okay, so I am calling it notes and I am pressing enter. Now, when I run this command, okay, so first we have to go inside our project and then within that project, we have created one mini app. This app is called notes. As soon as I do this, you will see that it creates another folder for us. And there are a couple of same files over here also, couple of different files. We'll go through that in just a minute. Similarly, what we can do is, let us say that we have another app called analytics. So we can add another app like this. And then let us say we have a third app called sharing, for example, note sharing, whatever, shared notes. So let's call it shared notes, for instance. So this will create another app, right? So typically all major components or all bigger functionalities that we want in our project, they will be created as separate apps. So over here, the project is one project, that's Notes API. Within this project, we have created three apps: Notes app, Analytics app, and Shared Notes app. Okay, so this is how a Django project is structured. So again, just like I told you, we can have products, orders, reviews, all different components in their own mini apps. Okay, so now I'm going to delete the whole thing. So to get out of this virtual environment, you have to use Control D. Okay, so when you use Control D, you can see that the terminal closes and we can basically get out of the environment. Control D or Command D, depending on, I think, Windows or Mac, but either way, we can get out of the environment like that. Now I'm going to delete the project and I'm going to show you the process once again. Okay, so far we have done two things. Our virtual environment is still running. Okay, so that's definitely one of the things. You can try different commands. Okay, exit, quit, all of that stuff. Okay, you can see that it exited now. But either way, when you start the terminal, it will be within the environment. So you can stop it with Control D. Both on Mac or Windows, it's Control D, I think, to stop the environment. Okay, now again, so to create the environment, you can go ahead and run the command. I'll just show you the command once again. I'll not run it, but this is your command. Okay. So Python 3 -m venv and the environment name. This is the command that you use to run the, basically create the virtual environment. And then on Windows, you might run just Python or py, one of the two. Okay, so in my case, since I have Python 3, I have to write it like this. On Windows, either this will work or this will work or this will work. One of the three will definitely work. Okay, this is the first step. Now, once you create the virtual environment, you have to activate it. So for activation in Linux or Mac, you have this source command. Okay, that source. Hold on. Yes, this one, source environment name bin activate. So when you create the environment, you get a folder called bin which contains the activate script. So we basically have to run that script. For that, we are just telling go to this folder and run the script. On Windows, it's a little different. You don't have to write source. You just have to directly specify the path. So that will be my world slash scripts slash something something till you reach the activate script. Okay. So that's how you activate the environment. Now, once you activate the environment, then it will work, or it will show it next to your name. Okay. Next to your terminal, it will show you this brackets, and within this, it will show you your environment name. So this means that your virtual environment is now active. Okay. Your virtual environment is now running. Now you can use deactivate to deactivate it. So that will be sudo deactivate. I think and that should deactivate the okay, we'll figure it out. But there are commands to deactivate it as well. But for now, we want to keep it running. Okay, so that's the virtual environment bit. Now, I think it is source deactivate. Let me just try this. And yes, you can see now it's gone. So now the virtual environment is no longer active. Okay. So yes, you can now, I can reactivate it by running my source for activation, and it will start working again. So the command is source deactivate. In Windows, it will just be deactivate. You don't have to write source, just deactivate, because there will be another script somewhere here for deactivation. Just like we have activation, we will have deactivation. Okay. So again, remember that this script is different on Windows and Mac. This is different. So if you're using Windows, you can check out the documentation for it. So it is going to be this. For Windows, it is this command, my world slash scripts slash activate dot just a second. Right. So yes, on Windows, this is your command for activation, and on Mac and Linux, this is your command. Okay. So once it gets activated, you can see it over here. Okay. Now, the next thing that you have to do is, Abhiram, please check that you have the name correct. Okay, if you have given it a different name like my env or some other custom name, then that should change, obviously. So whatever folder name is here, that is important. That name must be given in that command. So you're basically navigating into the folder and activating the script or running the activate script. Okay, now the next step is to create our Django project. Okay, the next step is to create our Django project. Abhiram, maybe try with sudo. If it's not working directly, maybe try with sudo. Should work ideally. Okay. Yes. So now to create the Django project, we have to first install Django. So that is going to be sudo pip install and then Django. Okay, so you can specify it like this. And if you want a specific version, you can use double equal to followed by the version name. So version number 5.0.6 is the latest. We have just seen that in the documentation. And you can see the latest is 5.0.6. So we can specify that like this. And this will install Django for us. Again, it's already done in our case. We have already installed it. Then you can create the Django project. So again, first we install, like create the virtual environment, we activate it, then we install Django, and then we install the Django project. So for that, the command is Django admin, followed by your start project command, and then the name of the project. So let's call it my shop. In this case, let's call it my shop. So this is going to now create another folder. You can see my shop. This is our project. Now within this project, we can create mini apps. So first we cd into my shop, and then we run Django admin start app. So now for all major components, for all API endpoints, we want to create individual apps. So we can say products. Okay, so product products. Okay, this is one API. Then let's say we have another API called orders. Okay, then we can have another API called users. Okay, for user related things like login, sign up. Then we can have another API for reviews, for instance. So we can create as many of these apps, mini apps that we want. So typically all URL endpoints that you see on a website, typically all of them will go under a separate mini app, a smaller mini app. Okay. The reason why we have to use sudo when we basically install Django is because in most cases you will not be able to install third party things from the terminal unless you have admin privilege, because you are installing a software. So most operating systems will block it. They will say you don't have the permission or something like that. So then you have to run sudo, which means you are the admin and you have the authority or the permission to install it. So it will ask you for your login password, which is the same password you use when you log in to Windows or Linux or Mac, either way. So you have to use the same password, and that way this will work. Okay, so this is the basic steps. There are 5 steps: create a virtual environment, activate it, install Django, create a Django project, create Django apps, or create apps within your project. Okay, these are the 5 steps. Now, what I'm going to do is give you 5 minutes. Okay, I'll give all of you 5 minutes. I want you to go ahead and try to do this. Okay, if you face any errors, any difficulties, please let me know in the chat. I will keep looking in the chat for 2 to 3 minutes, but please give it a try. Okay, I have shared everything with you. You know the commands. I have also shared the resources in the chat. So please scroll up a little bit. Okay, and you should be able to get it done. So I'll just wait for 2 to 3 minutes for you to quickly try this out, and then we'll move to understanding the folder structure for this, like what are the different files here and how the entire MVC architecture is going to work. So I'll just wait for 2 minutes, and in the meanwhile, I'm checking chats both here on Zoom and on YouTube Live. So if you face any difficulties with this, please let me know and I'll try to help you out. Okay. So yes, if you're done with this, just put a done, ready, something like that, so that I know you are done. But yes, I just wanted to try it so that all of us are on the same page. Okay, so just give me like I'll wait for 2 minutes. Just get this done and we'll continue. Okay, so most of you say that you are done, which is great. Okay, no worries. So, Abhiram, what we can do is we can stay back for 2 to 5 minutes after the session, and you can share your screen, and I'll try to help you that time. Okay, so instead of interrupting the session, let's do it at the end. I think that should be fine. There is nothing else on this YouTube live as well. Okay, great. So now let's continue to the next part. So again, for this, I have to explain a new concept to you. So again, pay very close attention. This is how the project works, or this is how Django works. Okay. Now, there are different terms for it. Okay. So some frameworks call it MVC architecture. Some call it MVVC architecture. So there are different terms that are used by different projects, but it's a simple setup. So let me just quickly walk you through this. And once we understand the theory behind it, then we can go ahead and we can, discuss the code. We can start writing some code. Okay. So how this works is very simple. There are three major steps. Okay. There are three major steps to a Django project. Okay, so there are three major steps to a Django project. The first is something called a controller. Okay, so we have, okay, let me start with a model. So the actual term is MVC. That's model, view, and controller. Okay, model, view, and controller. And this is exactly what we're going to follow in Django as well. So the first step is to define a model. A model is basically a blueprint for your data. So we will make a class which will show what are the different data items will be there, and we will specify the constraints for all of them. Like for example, if it is product data, we can say that there will be product name, which will be string. There will be product price, which will be decimal value. There will be product quantity, which can be number. A product is in stock, boolean value, yes, no, etc, etc. So we will define all of these data fields. Okay, so that's called a model. So first we will define a model, okay, which is typically represented by this database symbol. So here we'll have all the constraints for the product data, availability, etc, etc. That's the first step. Once we define this model, we then create what is known as a view. So the second step is to define a view. A view is going to be the UI that the user is going to access, or the endpoint that the user is going to access, right? So in the browser, typically whatever they type and whatever is seen on the screen, this is going to be our view. So this is view. Okay. Again, I know it's a terrible handwriting, but I can't really type with the trackpad really well. But yes, so we have the view. Okay. So this is going to be our model, right? So model, and then there is a view. Now there can be multiple views per model. So let us assume that we have another view. This is maybe for a single product. Okay, then this could be for a search result. There can be another page, right, where you can search for a product. So this can be a different page, for instance. There can be another view, which can be, let's say, for all categories that are being displayed. So there can be multiple views per model. Okay, let us see that this is another view. Okay, so this is model, these are views, and then we have something called a controller. Okay, so I'm just telling you that only, Akash. I'm just explaining the same thing to you, what it means. I'm literally just drawing the same thing. Okay, so then we have something called a controller. Now, this controller will basically be the control center, like the name says. Okay, so we have a control center. Let me just draw it this way. Okay, so this is the control center, and what this control center will do is, so this will basically be like your settings icon, right? This is how that looks like. So basically, what will happen is whenever there is any request that comes from the user, okay, it will first come to the controller. So this is our, so controller. Okay, this is going to be our controller. Now, what happens is whenever the user goes to your website, say www.myshop.com/products, whenever the user goes on that link, So it will come to the controller first. Okay. The controller will decide which model is being accessed. So the request will come to the controller. Then the controller will be like, okay, the product model is being accessed here. So the user is trying to access the product model. So then controller based on the model will decide, okay, so by default, all products must be shown. So it will go for the first view. If a request comes in searching for a particular product, so controller will figure out that, okay, product model is being used, but we want to provide search page. So it will then show the search view on the screen. Okay. Similarly, if a request comes looking for categories, for example, so that will be the third view that will be shown. So this is why we call it MVC, model view controller. So every request that comes in basically will be handled in this way. So first it goes to the controller. The controller will decide which model we are accessing. So we can have product model, order, all apps that we have created will have their own models. So there can be product model, order model, review model. So based on that, the controller will then decide which model it is. It will pass the control to the corresponding app. So if it's product model, it will go to the product app. If it is order model, it will go to the order app. So controller will just basically redirect the control. That's why it's called a controller. So based on the request that is coming from the user, the controller is going to redirect to the corresponding app that we have created. So far we have created 3, 4 apps, right? We have created products, orders, reviews, etc. So controller will first decide which app needs the control, or where should the control go. Then within that app, we can within that app we will have the corresponding model defined. So product is dealing with product data, so product model will be defined there. Order is dealing with order data, so orders model will be defined there, right? Accordingly, it will then decide which view to access. So products can have 4, 5 screens, all products, individual product detail, category list, etc., etc. So then based on the request, the controller, or based on that app, we will decide which particular view is to be shown on the screen. So that view is again sent to the controller as a response, and it is then shown on the screen. So this is what the MVC architecture is. There are a lot of backend frameworks which follow similar architectures. Okay, so they just use different names, but almost all backend frameworks follow a similar architecture like MVC, model view controller. Okay. Now we will not go into the details just yet. I will walk you through the basic code. We'll try to run the server. We'll see what we get. But we'll start creating this MVC code from the next session. I don't want to burden you with a lot in one session because it's a lot to take in. But yes, so we will just explore these smaller apps, and we'll also try to run the server to see what we get as the response. Okay. So now I'm just going to keep one app. So I'm deleting everything else, products and reviews and users. I'm just deleting everything else for now. And we are back to a single app for now. Okay. So my shop is our project, and then products is our app. You can see the folder structure is quite different. There are different files in both of them. There are also similar files, like init is the only similar file. Everything else is different, right? So now let me walk you through these files once again so that we understand their functionality. First up, we have, as you can see, the project, right? So in the project, my shop, we have several files. Okay, let's start with the init file. Like the name suggests, the init file is the initializer for the project. So if there are any data items or any constructors which we want to create, which will be global for the entire project, for all apps basically. So for every app, if we need something that is shared across all apps, then we will create it over here. Okay, so that's the init file. Then ASGI and WSGI are basically, they will just create applications for the internet. Okay, so WSGI is the graphical part of it, and ASGI is the text part of it. So don't worry about these files. It's just starting the application. Okay, so again, you can explore this in more detail if you want to look at this function. You can see it says that this is the public interface for ASGI support. Okay. Similarly, this will be the same thing for WSGI. right? So basically it will basically trigger all the graphics and all the text and all of those things which we don't have to worry about. So it's taking care of those housekeeping tasks for us. We don't have to worry about it. The only two files that are really important in the project are settings and URLs. Now, settings is where we will add a lot of things as and when we need them. So when we create a new app, we add it in this section, installed apps. So right now we have created a products app, right? So we can add it like this. Right? We have created a products app using the start app command. So we can add it like this. Only those apps that are listed in the settings will be able to work together, right? So if we forget to add something over here, this would mean that we are not able to access it in the project. So it's important that we are mentioning everything that we install. So if we have orders also, we can write that. If we then create reviews, we can write that. So whenever we create a new app, it is important to mention it in this list. It can be at the top or at the bottom or anywhere in between. It doesn't really matter. We can add it here or at the end or somewhere in between. Doesn't really matter as long as it is in the list. Okay. So this is important. This is what we do in the settings file. Whenever we create any app, we add it. And also if we work with databases, if we have some credentials to store, like, there's a databases section which we'll explore later. Then there is this credentials section, which we'll also explore later. Time zone changes, language settings, all of that happens over here. If we have some static files like, images, etc., etc., again, which we will add for our UI, we can add them in a folder. So that folder path needs to be specified here. So all of these things then are modified accordingly. So again, we will spend more time with settings as in when we keep adding new things to our project. Okay. Then the next file, which is really important, is URLs. So this will, we will modify this a little later, but whenever we create any application, like what we have done, products, whenever we create an app, we want to add that to our URL. So we will import it like this. Okay, so I'll show you that code later. We will basically import that when we create a URL for it, and then we will add it over here. Okay, so just like this, we will add another path, which will be, for example, products. It will not work just yet because we have not written any code for products, but it will basically be like this. And then we will add the corresponding model over here or corresponding import over here. Okay, so again, we'll worry about this later, but we can basically add it like this. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have for our URLs file. Now, this is the project setup. This is the project folder. Then we go to the individual app. And then, of course, we have manage.py. So whenever we start our project, we will run it through manage.py. Right? So let us say that we want to start our project right now. So we can say manage.py run server. Okay, so we have to say again Python. So that's py and manage.py run server. If py doesn't work, then Python or Python 3. In my case, it will be Python 3. So now it will then, check the system, etc., etc. I'll talk to you about migrations, but it will basically run our app. Okay, right now it is not going to run because we are still missing one step. I'll show that to you in a few minutes. Okay, but we can basically run our app through manage.py. So this is the starting point of our application. Okay. Then what happens is within our app, we have several other files like you can see. So first up, we have migrations. This is what is missing. This is the error that we got. So we'll do that in a minute. But then again, we have initialization. So if we need any constructors for the application only, which are not shared for the entire project, but are only specific to the application. So we will write those over here. Then admin.py, this is where we have to register our models. Like you can see, it is already mentioned in the comment, register your model here. So remember MVC, right? Model view controller. So we have two files, models.py and views.py. This is where we create our models. This is where we create our views. And then controller is our manage file. So that's going to be the universal controller for the entire app. So that's why we have models.py and views.py. That's literally MVC, model view controller. Okay. Then within apps.py, we can specify some app settings. So specific settings for this app. If we have anything to change, that will go here. And then we have the tests.py. So if we write any custom test cases, okay, that will go here. Okay. So there's a question which is, how do we know which constructor we want to initialize? So again, that will depend on what you're trying to build, right? So for example, if you are letting people enter a product data, so that would mean you write the constructor within the product. It's a specific constructor only for the product's path. But if you have something generic, which is typically not the case, we rarely have anything in this part. But yes, so if you have anything that is applicable to the entire project, then that will go in the main file. Again, when we write the code, I will show you examples for both. But typically, whenever we have specific constructors, we write them in the specific init files, right? Great. Then, so again, admin.py, this is where we register our models. Apps.py is app specific settings. Models is where we will write our data, define our data model. Again, I'll show you examples soon, not today, but soon, because this is too much to understand. So once this makes sense, or once this starts to make sense, then we'll explore this in more detail. Then test is where we write test cases. So we will not do this in our curriculum. It's not a part of the curriculum. But for testers, for software testers, this is where they can write their test scripts, right? So again, there are two types of testing. We have manual and automation testing. So there are scripts that we write, which the browser can run for us in the background and just test some repetitive things. So that goes here. Again, it's outside of our scope, so we'll not discuss it. Then we have views. This is where we'll write our UI part. So this is where we'll read request coming from the user. This is where we'll send response to the screen. All of that UI related stuff will happen within our views. We also create a separate file called URLs over here also. So just like we have a URLs in the project, we create a URL within the app also. So this will then contain all the individual paths. For example, slash all products, slash product ID, details for a particular product. All of those individual paths will be mentioned over here. So again, I'll give you examples of all of these soon, but this is the entire structure. I know it's a little comprehensive. There are a lot of things to it, but yes, so we'll talk about them one by one. Okay. Now, the last step that we have here before we run any app is migrations. So migration is basically a folder which gets created automatically when you want to run the project. Okay. So migration is basically all the individual setting changes that we have done, which we have to do for our manage py file. Okay, so basically when we write all the code for an individual app, we want to sync it with the entire project. So let us say that we have 4 or 5 apps and we have made some changes to it. We have made a model, added a new app, settings has been changed. So we want the project to take into account all of the changes that have been made, which is why we have the migrate. So this is a command that we have to run. So again, Python 3 manage, in my case, it is Python 3 manage.py and the command is migrate. Okay, so when I run this migrate command, okay, the spelling there is incorrect. It's manage.py, not puy. So you can see as soon as you do this, it is going to perform a couple of different steps. As you can see, it performs some admin level changes. It will take into account that a new app has been created. It will take care of all of those things for us. And this is migrations. So basically syncing changes. You can just say that we can just say that all our app related changes are synced together using migrate. And after this, we can run one more command, which is called run migrations or make migrations. So make migrations. This is going to again detect changes if there are any and make those changes or show us those changes. Done. So we run make migrations first to see the changes, and then we run migrate to make those changes. Now, as soon as I do this, you will see a couple of new folders and files get created. For example, this DB file gets created. This is a database file. So by default, if you remember the settings that we had, right, we had a SQL database, which was already mentioned. This, you can see default engine db.sqlite. So a new database gets created for us when we run those migrations. It will be empty database for now. There will be nothing in it, but it gets created when we run these migrations, right? Similarly, we get these cache folders. So cache is some extra data which is stored temporarily. You can see it gets created for the project level also and for the app level also. Again, we don't have to worry about any of these, but we have to run migrations. Finally, after the migrations are done, we can then run our app by run server. So manage.py and the command is run server. Okay. As soon as we run this command, it will now show us, it will just, check the project. If there are any errors, they will show up. And if not, our project is now available at this URL. So you can control click or command click on it to open it in the browser. And once you open it in the browser, it kind of looks like this. This is the default UI that we get. Again, we have not added our code just yet. Right? We have not added our code just yet. So this is the default code that we get with Django. It says the install works successfully. And you're seeing that, this is the default project. You can see there is a link to documentation. There's a tutorial to a polling app, and there's also a Django community link. So this is the default interface that we get when we create a Django project. So we have not added anything on our own just yet, which is why we get this. Okay, so if you are able to see this on the screen, then that means that your project has been created properly. And then everything that we do, it is going to show us over here. So if I just reload, if I click on the logo, whatever I do, it is going to automatically show us all of those actions over here that that you try to do this. So you try to get this URL, you try to access this link, everything will be tracked. That's our server running for us. Okay. So now what you should be doing is you should also try to run this. So I'll now show you the steps for that. Okay. So what you need to do is after you create the project, create any app. So that's Django admin start app. Right? The command is Django admin. Make sure you cd into the folder. So in my case, I'm already in my app project folder. That's my shop. Then you can run the Django admin. Django admin create, sorry, start app, and then your app name. Let's call it orders, for example. So this will create an app for us. Okay. Then we have to go to the settings, project settings. So that's settings.py. And over here, you have to add that app into the installed apps list. So I will add it like this, orders. Okay. Once I do this, there will be migrations to apply because we have changed something. We have changed something. So to run those migrations, we can say, again, Python 3, then manage.py, and then make migrations. So once I do this, it will try to detect some changes. Okay. And then you can run migrate. This will make those changes. So right now there is nothing much to change. Okay. So there are no problems. And then you can say run server. So Python manage.py run server. So I will leave these commands on the screen for a few minutes and I just want you to experiment with it. So first create an app, first cd into the project, create an app, then run make migrations. You will have some migrations to run. In my case, I had already run it, but in your case, you will see these migrations. So please run them. Then run migrate command to make sure everything is done properly. Then run server. Once you run the server, you should get this URL. And when you open it up, you should be able to see something like this. So I just want you to run the server, right? Do all of these steps till you get to a point where your server is running and you can see this output. If you're able to see this output, put a done, yes, ready, something on the screen. So I know that we are on track. Okay, I know you will need 2 to 3 minutes. So I'll just wait for 2 to 3 minutes. And once a couple of you send it done in the chat, I would know that this is done and we'll then proceed. Okay. So yes, you can take a few minutes, try to get this done, try to run the server, see the output, and then let me know in the chat that you're done. Okay, perfect. So I can see a couple of done in the chat. I hope everybody has been able to do this because this is the bare minimum that we have to do, right? For Django, these are the bare minimum steps. So we have literally not written any single line of code just yet. Right? We have not made anything custom. This is everything that we get from the Django team, right? Or from the Django framework, whatever we get from there, we have written all of that stuff. Now, the next thing that we will quickly discuss, since we have some time, I just want to quickly uh, show you how to create a very simple endpoint, a simple custom endpoint. So let's quickly go ahead and do that. Okay. So again, the attendance link will be shared by 9 o'clock or so. That's the timeline that we have, 7 to 9, I think, or 7:15 to 9:15. That was the timeline, that we have. So for people who are asking for the link, it will be shared later on, not yet. Okay. Okay. So I will take some general questions in about okay, I think we can do that now. So if you have any questions, any general questions regarding what we have been doing so far, do let me know. Okay. I will help you out with those. So I think there is one question regarding employability tests. Let me quickly answer that, and then we'll move to the next part. So regarding the employability tests, I already mentioned this earlier also, but since Lavanya is asking, yes, you need to, you need to give those tests, and it is required because of two reasons. Number one, it is beneficial for you, because you will have exposure to what kind of questions, or what kind of setup company interviews have. So when you start applying for a company or to a company, that is the first round that you have, right? So that's the first round of typically an aptitude round is the first test that happens, right? So that's something for you to explore what that round looks like. So that's why we have the employability test. And another thing is that we will get a good understanding of where you stand, in terms of aptitude and in terms of all of that, so that we are able to give you a better um, preparation material from our end. Right? So it's also important for us to understand what is it that you guys need more, what preparation will help you better. So for that, I will, recommend that you do give those employability tests, and it's really important in both cases. So I hope that makes sense to you. And yes, so whenever you get an email for an employability test, please try to complete it as soon as you can. Okay. Perfect. Now let us go ahead and talk about one part. So since we have some time, okay, I will you know talk about the next part. Okay, so regarding I will answer that, Akash. It's a good question. So there is a pattern, right? Even when you apply for interviews, there's a set pattern in which the interview questions are. Okay, and the pattern looks goes like this. So there are three coding questions typically in every coding round. If you are giving a company test where you have a technical round, generally in most cases there are going to be three rounds or three questions in the coding round. The technical round usually contains 20 questions or 10 questions, out of which either 7 or 17 MCQs are there, and you will have three coding questions. That's a set pattern, right? So in every technical round, you will follow this pattern. You will see this pattern being followed. So if there are 20 questions in total, there will be 17 MCQs, okay, and then three coding questions. The way these coding questions are structured is that there is one easy question, one medium question, and one tough question. So that's the structure. Now, obviously, the idea is that you try to finish off the easy question first, right? That's the best possible way. Finish off the easy one and then spend some time on the medium one. If you're able to get it done, well and good. And then you go to the a hard question. So obviously, first you finish off all the MCQs, then you do the easy question, then the medium, and then the hard. A lot of people make this mistake where they try to leave everything but focus only on the hard question. Okay. And what happens is they think that they will have time at the end where they can quickly finish everything, but that is not the case. Okay. Once you start working on a question, you might not realize how much time you're spending. Okay. So that's why it is really important for you to make sure that you finish off the MCQs first, you finish off the easy question, get that sorted, and then move to the medium and the tough questions. Okay, so just keep this in mind whenever you are writing any aptitude test or even a hackathon or whatever it is. Always follow this pattern. Whatever you know or whatever is easier, finish that first. Otherwise, in when you try to do something which you don't know, it might take longer and you will end up not even finishing MCQs. You will be like in the last 10 minutes, you will worry too much, you will want to do everything and you will mess everything up. So try to do it that way. Okay. Yes, now coming to the next part. So since we have about another 15-20 minutes, I'll just quickly walk you through the model creation. Right, so in our MVC pattern, like we discussed, the first step is to create our model. So we can stop our server with Control C. That's the command in the keyboard. Control C to stop the server, both Windows and Mac. Control C. Okay. Now, let's go to our products and let us say that we want to create a product model over here. Okay. So a model is basically going to be everything that we want for the data, like all the data that we want to store for a particular thing, right? So for that, we have to create a class. Okay. And here we can specify, or we have to, so the import is already there, like you can see, and then we have to create a class. Now, this class can be called product model. Okay, we can give it whatever name we want. And then we can say models dot model. So if you remember our object-oriented programming, this is how we create a class. And this thing here is inheritance. Okay, so this in the bracket, whatever, excuse me, whatever we write, this is going to be inheriting from the existing model class. So this is something that we already have available from Django. Right? Within this, we are taking the model class and we are inheriting that uh, within our custom class that we are creating, which is the product class, okay, product model. Now within this, we can specify everything that we want the product to contain. So for example, we can say product name is equal to, and then we have a couple of different fields. So we can say character field. Okay, so this will mean it can contain characters like ABCD, lowercase, uppercase symbols, all of that. Okay, and then within brackets, so this is a constructor. So we can specify some conditions. For example, we can specify maximum length. So we can say 200, which means the maximum characters a product name can have is 200. Okay. Then we can also specify other things like unique is equal to true. So this would mean that each product name must be unique. Okay. And just like this, we can add as much as we want. So we can say, for example, product description. Now, in the product description, we would typically not want any limit. So we can use a text field instead. So text field will not contain any limits. It will be a paragraph or longer because descriptions are subjective. Some products might have a smaller description, some might have a bigger description. So we can specify that like this. Okay. Then we can write category. So let us say that we have a product category. This will again be models.character field, and we can specify some, again, limit. So we can say maximum length equal to, let's say, 100. Now, obviously, it need not be unique because multiple products can have the same category. So we can obviously, only specify the length. We can keep the, we can ignore the unique part here. Okay. Then we have another thing called created at, for example. So this is the timestamp that we want to access. This is a standard thing. We always keep a track of whenever something was created and updated. So here we can use something called date time field. Okay. And then we can say now add, auto now add equal to true. So this will automatically take the current timestamp and set it. And then similarly, we will say updated at. Okay, updated at. And this will again be the same thing. So now what we are doing here is we are creating a model. Okay, we are creating a model. So all of these functions that we are using, these are all internally provided by our Django class, which is our model class. So this character field, text field, date time field, we have number field, and so many other fields like Boolean field, etc., etc. So every single data type that we have discussed earlier, okay, that can be created like this. So basically in a model, what we are doing is we are defining the data for a product. What are the different data pieces, data uh, items that a product can have? So a product can have name, a product can have description, a product can have category, and there can be other things like an image, rating, quantity, etc., etc. I'm not specifying everything, just giving you an example. Okay, so this is how the setup is going to be. Then what we do is we write another class here, which is an internal class or a nested class. And here we specify the DB table name. So what table name do we want to create for this data or for this model? So we can call it products. This is going to be the table name that we store this, where we store this data in. Okay. So now since we're dealing with SQL, MySQL, it is going to be a tabular structure or table-based data. So we are specifying what table name we want, and optionally we can specify how the data should be ordered. So we can typically order it by created at. Okay, so this is the value, basically sorted in this order. So based on the latest creation will be at the top, for example, or at the end. So ascending or descending, we can specify that. So these are two additional attributes that we specify. And then we define the constructor. So that's str like this. And we can just say return self dot product name, for example. So this is the model that we create. Again, let me walk you through what we have just done here. And this is going to be it. I'm not adding any more code today. I know it's going to be confusing, but I just want to cover all parts properly. Okay. So we have just discussed already how the MVC architecture works, right? MVC architecture, model view controller. We have already seen that. So based on that, the first step, like I showed you, if you remember the sketch I just drew a few minutes ago, first we have a model, right, which looks like this. Then we have a couple of views, and then we have the controller, right? So this is our settings thing, which is like a flower, fine, but it is a controller. Okay, so first we have to define this model, and that is exactly what we are doing over here. Now, what is a model? A model is basically a blueprint, a collection of all the data that we want to store for a given item. So in this case, our component or entity is product. So we are specifying every data that we would want for a product. Now, I have just specified 4 or 5 fields, but typically there can be a dozen or more. Right? We can have product image, quantity, stock, category, subcategory, discount applied, this, that. There can be about a dozen different fields. But for simplicity, for our understanding, I have just specified 4 or 5 things. Now, how do we define a model? Well, first of all, we have to import. So we are saying from Django.database, import models. Now, this is something that we get from Django. So it's not a custom thing. It's already available in the project. Then we define our own class, product model. Here we are inheriting. Remember inheritance? We discussed the other day, right? When I showed you, when I told you that those 4 pillars of OOP, right? We have encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. So inheritance is basically the ability of our code to derive or reuse some things from an existing piece of code. So we are saying that our product model wants to use some functions available in model, which is already available in Django, so that we don't have to write a lot of code on our own. We can reuse existing features provided by the Django team, right? So that's what we are trying to do over here. Now, how is that working? Well, we say inherit the model class. Once the model class gets inherited, we get access to all of these functions or all of these constructors like character field, text field, date time field, etc. These are available within our model class, which is provided by Django. So we have not written these functions or methods. They're already available within the model, right? So that's how this works. Now, how do we access it? Well, we are saying we want the product name to be a character field. So within this, we can specify all the constraints that we want. For example, one of the constraints is maximum length. So if you want to restrict the name of the product, it should not be more than 200 characters. We can do it like this. Then obviously every product must have a unique name, which means if there is another product with this name, it will give an error, right? So that's the unique attribute or unique mention here. So this is going to check if there is another product with this name, please don't create it. It will give an error. A product with the same name exists, please change the name, right? So this is the condition that we can specify. There are a lot more conditions we'll explore with time. Okay, but these are two of the most commonly used conditions. Then the description must be longer, right? So we don't really want it to be a limited few characters, but actually a paragraph or bigger. For that, we have an option called text field. So text field is going to be a longer piece of text, like a paragraph, two paragraphs, three paragraphs, whatever we want. Okay. Then we have the category. This is another character field. And then we have created at and updated at. These are two things that we store every time. No matter whatever data we are dealing with, these are two fields that we store every time. Okay. Because we want to know when a new record was created, a new item was added, and if it was updated, when it was updated. So for that, we have the date time field and auto now add, which means it will automatically take the current date and time from the system and store it in the database. So whenever you perform any create operation or you perform any update operation, these two things, it will update the timing accordingly. Okay, it will update the timing accordingly. Then these are all the different data fields that we want. After that, we are creating a subclass. Now, meta is basically, remember our HTML meta tags, they provide additional information. Right? In the exact same way, this meta class here is going to provide additional information about our data. What is that extra information? Well, we want to give it a name. What should be the table name? We don't want any default name to be taken, so we want to give a custom name. That's what we're giving here. And then we specify the ordering, which means in which order should the data be stored. So do you want to sort it in a particular order? So we are saying, okay, sorted by created at. That's our order. Okay. And then this is simply returning the product name, which means whenever we fetch anything or whenever we make an object of this class, it should always return the name of the product so that we know which product is being called, which object has been created. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, that's what we have written so far. Right? So this is the code that we have written so far for creating a model. This is the code that we have written for creating a model. Now, just like the product model, we can create order model, we can create review model, we can create every other model that we want. So typically, there can be multiple models also. We can have more than one model in a file. But typically, for every app that we create, we will have one model. We'll try to have a single model. So for products, we can have a single model. For orders, we can have model. And similarly, for reviews and whatever other things we want, we can create models like so. Okay. Now, once this model gets created, we have to register it. Can you remember where it was? Can you let me know in the chat which file contained a comment which said register your models here? I showed it to you earlier. Can you remember which file in our setup? I'll expand it for you. Um, Here, can you remember which file amongst these files that you see, is where we have to register our model? No, it's not manage.py. It's admin. In admin.py, we have a comment, right? Register your model. So here we have to import our current model. So that's from dot models import the product model. Okay. And then we register it by writing a single line. That's at dot site dot register. And then we specify product model. That's it. So this is how we register. So create a model and register. That's everything that we have seen today. Okay. So in today's session, to quickly recap, we have discussed how to create a Django project from scratch. So there were a couple of different steps. We have seen how to create a custom environment or a virtual environment in Python. And then in that environment, how do we install Django and how do we create a new Django project? This is everything that we have seen today. Okay. Now within that Django project, we have seen the structure, MVC, app creation, model, and registering the model. The attendance link has now been shared in the chat, so you can please fill that in and we can now continue in the next one. So in the next session, we'll see how to make the view, how to make the controller, and how to connect it all together. Okay, so we have covered a lot in today's session. Of course, in the next one, I will give you a quick recap and then we'll move to the next few topics. Okay, so again, the attendance link has been shared in the chat now. Please fill that in and make sure you fill in the feedback. That's very important. Okay, so please do that. And yeah, that's basically going to be it. So people who have, yes, Abhiram, you can now share your screen. Let me just give you access to that. Yes, you now have screen share access. So please share your screen and I'll help you out. For everybody else who does not have any issue, you can take a leave, but please make sure you fill the attendance form or the feedback form before you go. Okay. Yes, Abhiram, your screen is visible. Let's go to the terminal and uh, hold on, let me just see where you are right now. Django and then my world. Okay. Can you just expand on the scripts folder? Activate. Okay. Can you CD into my world once? Just try. I'm not sure if it will work, but we can try. Yes, I will upload the code for everybody who's asking. I will upload the code on GitHub in a few minutes, and I will also add the recorded link. Sure. Now run the command again, my world command. Okay, so the earlier command was correct. You can just cd dot dot slash go out one step. And the command is fine. It's not giving any error, which means it is running. Can you try to remove the BAT from there? Just try running activate, remove the batch. I mean, ideally we have to run the batch, but still. So just run my world scripts, activate, remove the .bat from there. No, then that is the correct command, I guess. You can just run that command and try to create try to install Django. Yeah, run this and try to then run. You can just close the terminal and open it again. No, you are inside one folder. Yeah, just go out. Interesting. How about you try this all over again? Start from creating a new environment. Keep the 10 folder, just delete. Yeah, just make another folder that will work. So directly within 10, you can run. Yeah. Just go out one step, go out one folder, cd dot dot slash. Okay. Yes, now run that. Okay, now try to install Django on it. That will be pip install. Also just expand the new folder. In the left menu, can you just expand the new folder? I think it's fine. You're able to create, you can create the app now. Like you can run Django admin and try to create the app. So Django admin, start project, Django dash admin. Yes, start project without a space. It's a single command. And then the project name. No, yeah, start project and project name. Uh, okay. Yeah, it's working fine. You should be able to work with this. No worries. I'm not sure why it's not showing up in your terminal, but you have the environment and it's working as well. So everything is good. No problem.